Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks very much for inviting me to speak at this year's CCLG conference. My name's Dom Raban, and I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes or so talking to you about Xploro. So if you'll just bear with me a second, I'm just going to share my screen. So the Xploro story starts with this young woman. She's my daughter, Izzy, and when she was 13, she was diagnosed with Ewing's sarcoma. Now, 10 years later, Izzy is thankfully cancer-free, but when she was ill, nobody told her what to expect, and that made her feel scared, anxious, and alone. She was resistant to treatments because their purpose wasn't explained to her, and she was scared of new environments because she didn't know what to expect. And the long-lasting effect of this is that now Izzy is reluctant to trust and engage with health services. But this experience isn't unique to Izzy. Across the board, provision of information preparing children for hospitalisation is poor. And the pandemic has exacerbated the problem with vastly reduced opportunities for pre-procedural preparation and familiarisation. And we know that children who are poorly informed experience high levels of anxiety, and that can be long-lived and lead to poor engagement with health services and poorer health outcomes. And this lack of information also creates increased risk of behavioural or psychological problems, negatively impacting both home and school life. And when a child patient is labelled as uncooperative or resistant to treatments, sedation is often used. And yet these behavioural issues, more often than not, result from a lack of familiarity and preparedness. But lack of prior information doesn't just impact the patient's mental health and long-term health outcomes. When patients aren't emotionally prepared, this can result in procedures having to be repeated, longer appointment times, greater need for pre-procedural sedation, reduced adherence to medicine regimes, and an increase in missed appointments, all of which considerably increases the cost burden on health services. So that's why we've developed Xploro, a patient engagement platform that uses augmented reality, an artificially intelligent avatar, and a series of games to give young patients a voice, making them feel engaged, empowered, and informed, whilst having fun at the same time. So the best way to show you how Xploro works is to give you a demo. So I'm just going to stop sharing this screen and share another. So again, just bear with me for 1 second, if you will. So this is Xploro. You're viewing my iPad, but it's available on both mobiles and tablets across Android and iOS devices. It's also available in UK English, American English, Castilian Spanish, and Latin American Spanish, with several other languages due to be available soon. I'll just tap the forward arrow and tap Yep, let me in. So just before I go on, there are 3 components to Xploro: what you're seeing now, which is the patient application, a management system, and a parent application. And for a child to have got to this stage, what will have happened is that the healthcare professional will have recommended Xploro to the parent. They create an account on our parent app and go through some reassurances about how their child's data will be used, and some reassurances about how all of the content within Xploro has been validated by clinicians. And then once the parent is happy with that, the parent generates a unique 3-word code. And that 3-word code can then be entered by the child into Xploro. I've got the code, so it is listen, seal, and prose. And I'll tap the tick. And now we're into Xploro, and you'll see a present bouncing around. Now, if I tap that present, out pops an avatar. And the whole premise of Xploro is that this avatar becomes the child's friend and guide through their healthcare journey. Excuse me. Now, at this point, the avatar carries no gender or racial alignment. It's up to the child to add those characteristics. So if I tap the forward arrow, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to customize my avatar to make it my own. So if I tap customize my look, and I'll just change some of these parameters. put some clothes on. Something else I can do in the avatar customizer that you can't do in other avatar customizers is I can have my avatar in a wheelchair if I want. I can even wear a face mask, but I'm going to go with the first aid kit and tap done. So there's my avatar. Now the next thing we're going to do is give the avatar a name. So I'll tap the forward arrow. Now we use this avatar in multiplayer gaming. And so there's no opportunity here for free text entry from the child. So we basically just go through a list of names until we find one that we're happy with. I'm going to go with Timmy Spanglenose and tap done. So there we go, Timmy Spanglenose. Couldn't have picked a better name myself. Tap the forward arrow. And it now says it's time for me to enter your world. So I'm just going to pick up my iPad. And we just get a short warning message. And then if I tap the forward arrow again, you'll see that my camera's been activated and you can see my desk there. Now in a second, a balloon is going to appear. And when that balloon turns green, I'm going to tap it. So there's Timmy stood on my desk, and I can move him around and I can make him bigger and smaller. And this is just about making the avatar feel real to the child. So I'll tap the green balloon. And now we're into the main body of the app. And just before we go on and I'll show you around the other features, whenever you see that red balloon there, top right, that means that you can always see whatever you're viewing in augmented reality. So if I tap the red balloon now, Timmy will go through that door into the real world. I'll just bring him back. And that can be tapped at any point to see anything in augmented reality. So I'm going to go to the menu. We're going to start with the picture of a clinician at 11 o'clock on the dial. So if I tap that, really confusing when you go into hospital, understanding who everyone is and what they do. So here we have a list of all the staff roles you're likely to encounter. I'm going to take a look at the radiographer. So if I tap radiographer, I get a description of what a radiographer does. But most importantly, as a child, what I can do is I can customize that radiographer's avatar. So I'm just going to change some of the parameters here. I'll change the eye shape. So there's my radiographer. And I'm going to give her a name by tapping hello, my name is. Let's say she's called Susie. So there's Susie, the radiographer. And what we find is that very often children will co-create these avatars with the healthcare professionals that are looking after them. So I'm just going to close that. And if I go back through the list, you'll see that Susie, the radiographer, has now appeared in that list. And if I wanted to add another radiographer, I just tap that big plus button. So I'm going to go up to the menu now. And I'm going to go anti-clockwise and into the treatments section. Now in this section, we explain a range of complex treatments and procedures. I'm going to show you the MRI. So if I tap MRI. Now we know that MRI is a particularly scary experience for children, makes a horrible noise, lasts quite a long time. So it's really important that you prepare children for procedures like that. So you can see there's an orange glow around the MRI. Whenever you see an orange glow, it just means you can tap something. So if I tap that, I can find out more about it. And if I press the forward arrow, I now see an exploded view of the MRI, and I'm able to tap each of the components of the model to find out what they are. And then if I tap the forward arrow again, the model comes back together, and then in a second, the control room is going to come into view. So there's the control room, and you can see there's a monitor in the control room. If I tap that monitor, I can now see what an MRI looks like. Close that and tap the forward arrow again. Okay, so we're going to start scanning. My radiographer has come into the room, Susie. That's because all of those avatars that I showed you previously, they're all contextual. So if we customize, say, a surgeon and we were in the operating theatre, it would be our surgeon that appeared there. So I'll tap the forward arrow again. And it says the MRI makes lots of noise, so I should wear earplugs and headphones. So let's put the headphones on and play my favourite music. So I'll tap the forward arrow again. And now you can hear the sound of the MRI. Now, if I move that slider at the top of the screen, what that's demonstrating is that by wearing headphones, I can drown out the sound of the MRI and listen to music. So I'm just going to come out of that section now. I could go on and see the whole procedure, but I'll come out of there and I'm going to go back to the menu and we're going to carry on anti-clockwise to the games section. Now, some of these games are multiplayer. I'm going to show you a single player game called Plasma Patrol. And this game's all about how leukemia is treated. If I tap learn more, the object of the game is to collect platelets, lymphocytes, vitamins, chemotherapy and iron, to destroy cancer cells and to avoid white blood cells, fat cells, pathogens and dead cells. So I'll just tap the back arrow and tap play solo. Okay, so here's my avatar running down the hospital corridor. In a second, we're going to see him jump in a spaceship. And then when he arrives in the bloodstream, we can begin to play the game. So here we go. 3, 2, 1, and we're off. So I'm going to control the rocket with my finger bottom right. There's a cancer cell. I'm going to get that. Those blue purpley things are white blood cells. I need to avoid them. I'll get that cancer cell. There's some chemotherapy. If I get that, I get a power up. Let's get this cancer cell here. And there's another cancer cell there. And we'll get that pathogen and so on and so forth. And you can see I'm actually doing quite well this time around, but I'm going to stop playing the game. So I'll exit the game. And if I continued, I would get a high score and that would be submitted to a leaderboard. Okay, so I'm just going to go to the home screen. And throughout the application, you might have noticed that my avatar is always present bottom left of the screen. And that's because at any point, I can always ask my avatar a question. So if I was to ask, will my operation hurt? It understands my phonetic spelling because it's broken my text input down into phonemes. So is my operation going to hurt? And it gives me a response. It can do other things too. So if I was to say, am I going to die? It recognizes that that's the kind of question that no chatbot should ever attempt to answer. So I'm going to close that now and go on to the next section, which is the environment. So here we have a range of hospital environments. Some of these are can be bespoke to individual hospitals and others are designed to be generic. I'm going to show you the ward environment. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to tap that red balloon so that we can see it in augmented reality. So I'll just wait for the balloon to appear on my desk. And tap it. And there is the ward. And I can navigate around that ward by moving my iPad in and out of the model. I can go right in and see things in detail and tap things. I've come back. There we have the ward. So I'm going to come out of there. I'm going to go back to the menu and I'm just going to show you one more feature before we go back to the presentation, and that's the calendar. And the calendar integrates with our management system and with our parent application. So in our parent application, parents can add events which will appear in the child's calendar. In the management system, clinicians can add events which will also appear in the child's calendar, and we can integrate directly with hospital systems. So to add an event, the child taps this big plus. So let's say Auntie Sue is coming to visit. And she's coming such and such time. I'll just save this event down. Save the event. Now you'll see there's a question mark next to all of the events in the calendar there. And this is a feature that we co-designed with our expert advisory board. I'm going to talk about them in a little more detail shortly. But if I tap the question mark next to Auntie Sue coming, I can record how I'm feeling about that. Let's say I don't like Auntie Sue very much, so I'm feeling angry. How am I feeling about an upcoming scan? Well, I'm feeling nervous about that. And how am I generally feeling today? So Generally, I'm feeling happy today. And all of that information is played back to our management system, where the clinicians can get an overview of mood changes over time. So that's a very brief tour of Xploro. I'm going to go back to my presentation now. So if I just stop sharing that screen and I'll share my presentation again. So, does Xploro work? Well, a recent research study showed that children with access to Xploro demonstrated a statistically significant reduction in procedural anxiety, as well as statistically significant increases in both knowledge about procedures and patient satisfaction. And what's more, their parents showed similar results. And you can find that study in the Journal of Medical Internet Research. In the next few weeks, we'll be kicking off 2 new studies. The first is at Boston Children's Hospital, where we hope to show that by preparing children for MRI, we can reduce the number of repeat procedures. And the second is at OHSU Dornbecker Children's Hospital in Oregon, where we hope to show that by preparing children for surgical procedures, we can reduce the need for pre-procedural sedation. So I want to talk briefly about how we've used a human-centered design process to develop Xploro. And the core principle of human-centered design is that you should truly understand the people who experience a problem before you design a solution to serve them. And to that end, the first thing we did was conduct landscape research by going into a hospital setting and looking at the tools that healthcare professionals currently use to prepare children for procedures. And we also conducted interviews with patients, parents, and clinicians to understand user needs. We then invited some school children to take part in week-long work experience placements, and we asked them how they would feel if they had to go into hospital and what they would design to make that experience feel better. And by now, we had a clear idea that we would build a solution that used 3D augmented reality models, games, and an artificially intelligent avatar guide. So we built some basic prototypes and tested them with patients and clinicians. We learned an immense amount from that, so we went on to refine the prototypes and then tested them again, this time in a usability lab where we could observe behaviours and identify areas for improvement. It's important too that when we're building new content that our team understands the processes we're describing in the app. And here's one of our team having a radiotherapy mask applied. As we build new features, we always seek feedback from children, whether they be in a hospital, a school, or a home setting. This is a user testing session with ClickSergeant's Children's Advisory Group. And the eagle-eyed amongst you might have noticed that that's my daughter on the right there facilitating the workshop. Most important, though, in our human-centered design approach is our expert advisory board. I mentioned them briefly earlier. They're an amazing group of 12 children aged between 8 and 16. They come from diverse backgrounds and have a range of hospital experiences, from never having visited hospital to lifelong treatment and care for serious illness. Like all children, they tell it like it is, keeping us on our toes, and that helps to ensure that Xploro always meets the needs of the patients we serve. And we're actually currently looking for new recruits, so if any of you have children that would like to join the group, do please get in touch. So Xploro is currently in use in the UK at the Christie and UCLH, with several other NHS trusts coming on board soon. It's also in use at National University Hospital in Singapore. In the next few weeks, we'll be going live at 3 hospitals in the United States and also at Hospital Santiago de Deu in Barcelona. And personally, one of the deployments I'm most excited about is that we're working with World Child Cancer to make Xploro available to children with cancer in low and middle income countries. And in the next few weeks, we're starting a trial in Ghana. Finally, I'd like to leave you with this quote from the mum of a 9-year-old girl waiting to go into hospital for the removal of a benign brain tumour. She said, "Just wanted to quickly say that my daughter is loving the app at the moment. She said she feels that it's making the process less scary for her, and she's loved showing it off to family members." We have noticed that in the few days since using it, she's been openly talking about going into hospital, which before this she wouldn't do. So this girl went from a state of fear with no agency in what she was about to go through to being able to use Xploro as a way of sharing her thoughts and mentally preparing for a traumatic procedure. And for me, that effectively sums up why we're doing what we're doing. Thank you.